Welcome back to the Ultraviolet Tide. It has been such a long time since we sat down and recorded an episode of the top 5 on the Tide. Leah, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It feels so good to be back after a much needed summer break, I think, for the both of us. Just happy to be back and sharing more stories.
I agree. It was not a hiatus we were planning on, but sometimes life just happens. If you follow along on Instagram, you'll know that the Low Ultraviolet headquarters moved. I personally moved. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a new backdrop. And I told Leah, I was like, man, I cannot tackle another thing this summer. We're going to have to recoup in September and get back to podcasting. But it was a much needed break, but we're back to deliver you guys the top 5 stories for September. We pulled 5 great stories, and then we also have our community wins segment back. And Leah, you're kicking us off. So let's dive into the top 5 stories for September.
I sure will. But before I do that, I just want to point out to our viewers that are watching us, if you see that Erica and I are twinning, we are. And this was not planned.
Love it. It makes me so happy.
Yes. So if anybody's interested in what we are wearing the Low Ultraviolet All-Star tennis dress. Erica's wearing the black and I'm wearing the bluish teal color, and there's also a pink. I proudly own all 3 colors and I love them so much. It is going to be 90 degrees here with 80% humidity today. So this is the OOTD right here.
There you go. I love it. I know when the weather gets hot, you need stuff that's moisture wicking.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So I will be living at this today and probably the rest of this week. So just wanted to put a little PSA out there. But we are kicking off the top 5 on the Tide for September with the first story that is titled, "As Sunscreen Misinformation Spreads Online, Dermatologists Face Real-Life Impact of Online Trends." And this news story was pulled by from CBS News. And essentially what this CBS News article talks about is discussing the spread of misinformation about sunscreen on social media platforms like TikTok. And, I know I've seen a lot of this over the last 6 to 8 months. Erica, I know you have seen it as well. And unfortunately, what's going on is really concerning because dermatologists are concerned about this misleading claims that can deter people from using sunscreen properly or even using it at all, which we know is a no-no. And so these claims often suggest that sunscreen is unnecessary or even harmful, and it's contradicting scientific evidence that supports sunscreen's role is actually preventing skin cancer and protecting against the UV damage of the sun. And so CBS News confirmed, looked at, a Google search trends that's been going on and saw terms like sunscreen and what does skin cancer look like. Apparently right now they're at an all-time high since tracking began in 2004.
Wow.
So again, showing that people are really potentially looking into these claims that are spreading on social media. And I guess it's good that they are doing their own research and looking up things on Google. But I think you and I both know, Erica, that sometimes relying on Google is not the safest and most reliable resource, and it can really go down a toxic rabbit hole. And then the article talks about an influencer, I believe her name is Nara Smith, that's how she pronounces it, went viral sharing an at-home sunscreen recipe to her 8 million followers that dermatologists say does little to protect wearers from sun damage. Again, somebody like that with that type of audience, an influencer, sharing an at-home sunscreen recipe, 1, those don't work, and 2, that's, again, harmful misinformation that's being spread to people that may think that that's cool if they really like this individual, this influencer, or think that this is correct or safe or what have you. So, and then it talks about that, this misinformation reflects the surprising reality of how some young Americans view sun safety. And I thought this was really interesting. A study by the Orlando Health Cancer Institute in March found that 1 in 7 adults under the age of 35 say daily sunscreen use is more harmful than direct sun
Wow. Oh my
exposure.
gosh.
I
One in
know.
seven.
I know. It's a lot of people. And so the article ended on a positive note, just sharing that, the dermatologist CBS News spoke with say there is no such thing as a healthy tan. To best protect yourself this summer, and obviously all year round, wear sunscreen, reapply often, wear UPF clothing like brands like Low Ultraviolet, wear hats, avoid being outside during peak UV index hours from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So, Erica, I'm going to pause there. Please let me know, have you seen this article? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have definitely seen some of these videos on TikTok, or I've seen the second version of them of dermatologists responding to these kinds of videos. So you're absolutely correct that it seems like kind of as the summer wave comes of people, spending time outside and, sunscreen conversations seem to go back into people's conversations as spring and summer come. So do these kinds of videos, which is super interesting. And what I find very reassuring is I always go to the comment section because I'm just super curious how people respond to these types of videos. And I find it super encouraging that there are so many comments from people saying, like, hey, like, you do you, but like, just know that skin cancer is like very harmful. I've had a loved one who's passed from it. And just seeing those types of conversations and comments on these videos are super reassuring because when I see them come across my feed, I'm sure you feel the same way, Leah. I just like feel like a stab in my heart of like we've been doing all of this work and seeing videos like this just like kind of hurt my soul because we've talked about influence before and how many people these influencers can reach. And I don't think they're intending to do any harm. It's just blatant misinformation. Like, I think back to when people were mixing their sunscreen with their foundation or other beauty products. And then this whole wave came about, hey, that's actually, diluting the effects of your sunscreen. And so many great conversations have come from it. So, I do feel encouraged that we are seeing people talk about these things and actually shed light on the actual information, but it's still discouraging whenever you see them. Leah, we spend so much time and energy trying to combat this stuff, but I do hope that, we're trending toward people doing their own research. I mean, seeing that Google trend data is super great because it means people are, taking a step from TikTok and searching stuff. And yes, we can talk about how Dr. Google has its own set of issues, but hopefully people are Googling and they're pulling up resources like the Skin Cancer Foundation, like the Melanoma Research Alliance. Hopefully those are like the top results that they're seeing.
I sure hope so. And I think it's really awesome to see these dermatologists on social media, which a lot of them have a larger following than some of
Yeah.
these influencers or these people that are spreading this misinformation. So I've really enjoyed seeing the dermatologists like completely like bust all of these myths
Me
or
too.
do the stitches where like they'll
Hmm.
show, in the beginning, this influencer saying like, apply this oil to protect yourself. And then like,
Hmm.
bam, the dermatologist comes on and like something like, actually don't do that. And this
I
is
love
why.
them.
And so I think those are really empowering and really inspiring. And so I'm just so happy to see dermatologists are really doing their due diligence and their job, trying to spread real information and credible information. And like you and I've talked about, Erica, sun safety right now is trending, whether that
Hmm.
is applying sunscreen, protective clothing, or the opposite of that. So
Right.
I think to your point, Erica, all in all, at least we're talking about it, at least we're having these discussions. And I think the more and more these discussions are being had, the more opportunity will be to learn and to grow in, really sharing about the harmful rays of the sun and the amazing products that are out there to protect all of us.
Hmm. I agree. I think, every conversation is really an opportunity to continue educating and informing. And you mentioned a little bit about UV index in the story as well. And we have another story that's coming up in a few that we'll talk about what the UV index is. It's like super complicated, but we'll get to a story that kind of breaks it down in a really nice way. So that's coming up, a brief, plug for that. But before that, our next story is doctor reveals when a pimple is actually skin cancer. And this is a thing that we have heard, I feel like, kind of frequently recently because Khloe Kardashian came out and we have talked about her melanoma journey and her sharing that story, but her story started with her thinking it was a pimple and being confused as to why it was not healing. So that's one of the main reasons we wanted to talk about this story, because it's actually a lot more common than you think that than you think it is, that you think skin cancers, particularly basal cell carcinoma, is just a pimple. So we pulled this story from a UK source called Express, and it says we all get blemishes on our skin every now and then. They can be a result of hormonal changes or any other things in your environment causing harm to your skin. But there are times when a pimple could signal something far more sinister. And they ask in the story, so how can you tell the difference between just a breakout and a potentially cancerous spot? So according to, they interviewed quite a few doctors for this story, and they gave telltale signs of skin cancer versus just kind of a normal spot on your face. And they actually quoted Dr. Michael Morozinski, who filmed a TikTok video. So we love it. Good TikTok videos sharing factual information. And in this video, he was explaining more about basal cell skin cancer and what to look for and what it looks like and how it does develop on areas of the skin exposed to the sun, such as your face. So that's why people commonly think it's just, a pimple or a breakout, because that's far more common. It looks the same, so your brain would automatically kind of assume it's something similar. So he said, responding to another creator's video about a spot on their nose, that this right there is a perfect example of what an early basal cell skin cancer looks like. Parker's chiming in there, if you can hear him jingling. Um, and we'll link the TikTok video. I think it'd be great if we linked it in the show notes so that you guys can see it and just start to look for these warning signs. But he says, when in doubt, get it checked out, which we totally agree with. But Leah, super curious your thoughts on this. And if you've also heard a lot of cases of people mistaking maybe a melanoma or a basal cell carcinoma for just a blemish.
Yeah. So I have heard this situation also many times, and it's so funny now after having melanoma, anytime I have a pimple on my face, like I monitor it so much, because I'm like, okay, if this doesn't go away or if it falls off and it comes back, like I need to go back and get a skin check. I actually have a blemish here right now and up here, and I was like this, like in the mirror this morning, I'm like, is that one that came back or is this a new one?
Right.
And especially like women around the time of the month, like we could have, which is going to be happening for me soon. Sometimes that just happens. That's life. But I think that is honestly a way that people talk about basal cell carcinoma. And I think for me, what I resonate with is it's a visual that some people can understand and remember. So, we've all had pimples. We all kind of know what that looks like. And I think it takes it to the next level of, how long is that pimple staying on you? Is it growing? Is it falling off, drying out, and coming back? And
Right.
so again, it's a way for people to connect with it and then remember, okay, like this is something that I should be aware of. So I have heard this quite a bit, and I think it's, again, basal cell carcinoma, I mean, to my knowledge from statistics I've read, it's one of the most, if not the most frequent type of skin cancer that happens to both males and females. It's more common than melanoma. It's more common than all the rare types of melanoma and squamous cell. Basal cell is the most common. And so it makes sense why more people should be talking about this, why we should be more aware of how it may or may not present on individual skin and their body. And to your point, Erica, it's obviously more common to have like a pimple-like feature on a face rather than like an elbow or
Right.
your knee or something like that. But again, basal cell is just not tied to the face. It can happen anywhere. So again, just like really happy that people are again using the platform of social media, especially TikTok, where it can be its own little world, and they're using it for the better, and they're using it to share really helpful information that people can use in their toolkit when they need it. If something pops up on their skin and they start to figure out, oh my gosh, like, is this something, to worry about or to not?
Right. No, I agree. And I think the line of when in doubt, get it checked out makes total sense. I know there have been times, I mean, I've talked about this before. I love my monthly facial. It is my thing. I go every month. I love my esthetician, adore her. And she is so set on like telling people when she sees something changing on their skin, particularly because she sees a lot of her clients every month. And she's pointed out spots to me. Like I have two moles up here in my hairline, and she's like, "Hey, I want you to go get those checked out." And I was like, "Just had my skin checked. They're all clean." And she's like, "Good. I'm so glad. I can't bear to like see something and not say something and tell people to actually go check it out." Because she's like, "I can see it, and maybe I see it changing, but I'm not a dermatologist. I'm an esthetician. So like, I'm gonna hand you over to the people who know better, but I'll be your advocate for looking for stuff and let you know if I see something changing," which I really appreciate. And I was like, that's amazing. Keep doing that. I was like, yeah, this is my field. So that brings me so much happiness and joy. And I'm going to tell you to do that to every client.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I love that you do your monthly facials. So I've never had one, and I know like how beneficial they are. So that may need to be a self-care opportunity for me now that I'm in my 30s. I just am all about taking care of my skin after melanoma and
Right.
realizing I'm not getting any younger. So I have to
You
pamper
still look
myself.
amazing, Leah. You don't look a day over 25.
Oh, thanks, girl. My goodness. Well, speaking of young individuals, our next story is such an incredible one. This just recently hit the news. This article is from USA Today, but it was also on multiple other news sources. The article is titled 15-Year-Old Who Created Soap That Could Treat Skin Cancer and was named Time's 2024 Kid of the Year. So this USA Today article highlights Herman Beckiel, I think is how he pronounces his name, a young innovator who has developed a soap designed to help prevent skin cancer. So a little context and background information. Last year in 2023, 3M and Discovery Education named Beckiel America's top young scientist when he was 14 years old after he completed against 9 other finalists, US Today previously reported. And in 2023, he won $25,000 cash prize for this
Wow.
innovation, which, boy, that money at 14 years old, he must have
Oh my God.
felt like on top of the world.
Right.
um, and so that was last year. And then this year, he was recognized in 2024 by Time Magazine as part of its Kid of the Year program, which aims to make skin cancer prevention accessible, especially in areas with limited healthcare resources.
Mm.
So the Keel soap that he created contains ingredients that target skin cancer cells while also being affordable and an easy way to produce. And this soap was inspired by his childhood in Ethiopia before moving to the United States at age 4. The soap delivers cancer-fighting drugs via lipid nanoparticles, which work to activate the body's immune cells to fend off cancer. And so I just thought that this was just such a cool article. I want to end like talking about this with a final quote from him, but want to pause here to ask you, Erica, have you heard about this incredible 15-year-old boy and his invention with this soap?
I remember we talked about this kind of, I don't think it was a story on one of the top 5 episodes, but it was like kind of a tangent that we got off on that we had just started hearing about this. I don't know if it was originally in 2013 when he won the funding at that competition, but I remember hearing about it and thinking, okay, what the heck is this? How does it work? I need more information. And there wasn't a ton of information out at that time. So it's really cool now to read about how it actually works. I mean, I'm a huge nerd for, zinc oxide nanoparticles, which works in apparel. So this is really cool to read about something that's kind of a similar technology. And we also talk all the time about affordable, methods of fighting cancer and just overall wellness that people can use in areas where they don't have direct healthcare resources and access, or maybe they don't have as many resources as others. And I don't know, Leah. I read about this and I know you, like me, we've had so many biopsies and spots taking off of our skin. And anytime I hear an innovation that might add to the ability to not do that as much or prevent or just any kind of innovation, I get really excited about because I get super frustrated that sometimes, the field hasn't progressed as much as I would like it to have. So I'm really excited by this and I can't wait to hear so much more about the work that he's doing.
I know, me too. And I find it really cool that essentially what the soap does is it resembles basically what immunotherapy is doing, right? It is drugs that are enhancing the immune system to fight the cancer. So that's literally where treatment for melanoma is going, especially in the advanced stages. My dad is one of them that has benefited from it and so many others. But just, even that, some people don't, to your point, Erica, have access to
Right.
immunotherapy and most people could obtain a bar of soap and
Right.
use that as a way of treating skin cancer, preventing it from spreading. And just the last quote I wanted to share to kind of tie up this article was Beckiel was quoted saying, "I've always been very passionate about science and how things work. And then slowly as I grew up, that curiosity started to develop into something more. Growing up in Ethiopia, I always thought people were always getting hit by the hot sun working outside. And I didn't think much of it when I was really little. But as I grew up, I realized how big of an issue skin cancer really is, not only in Ethiopia, but everywhere around the world." And I thought that that was just so sweet that this is connected to, his roots and his childhood. And now he's globally known as this 15-year-old creating this invention. It's just so wild, so cool. So had to share that article.
I love that he's 15 years old and he's talking about all of this world knowledge that he's accumulated that I can't wait what's going to come from him in the next 15 years. It's just really inspiring and hopefully, he's leading cancer innovations and, some large organization partners with him. And I don't know, it's just so cool. And I plugged earlier talking about the UV index. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that because I think this also ties super nicely into the story that we were just talking about, Leah, because he was talking about his childhood in Ethiopia. And so we're going to talk about the UV index and how in different areas in the world it does vary. And it's not just something that you have to think about in the summer months, especially depending on where you are close to the equator and all of that stuff. But, anyways, so our next story is the UV index levels explained and how to protect yourself, and the source is BBC. So, the story starts out by saying levels of UV radiation vary throughout the day. The highest reading the highest readings occur in the 4-hour period around solar noon, which is when the sun is at its highest spot in the sky, usually from late morning to early afternoon. So that's why you often hear people say to, avoid being outside and being exposed to sun around 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is typically the hours that you hear. So the values of a UV index can start at 0. We very rarely see it at 0 unless it's nighttime. And it can rise above 10. So once you see numbers like 10, 11, that is very high. You are in the danger zone. So the higher the number, the greater the potential for damage to the skin and your eyes, which is super important to also remember your eyes. And it's also it takes less time when the UV levels are higher for harm to actually occur to your skin. So countries close to the equator, which what I was alluding to earlier, experience very high UV levels in the middle of the day, but throughout the year. And the article quotes that Nairobi and Kenya can have UV levels above 10 all year long. And that's according to the World Health Organization. So, how to check for the UV index. And Leah, I know this is something that we have both shared on our stories before, that on the weather app, you can actually pull up the UV index. And I do it every single day. So if it is something where I need a break from work and I want to go for a walk, I always check to see what the UV index is. And that's how I decide what protection I'm going to take with me. You know, if it's low, if it's toward the end of the day, so if it's like 5:30, 6 p.m., I'm going to put on a baseball cap. I'm going to make sure I have sunscreen on my face. But then I'm kind of going, because at that point, you know, the sun is setting, and especially if you're in the shade, your risk is super, super low. So according to that UV index, no protections required. I always say I just love the habit of wearing a baseball cap and sunscreen on my face, just like all the time. Um, but, you know, as you get higher up, sun protection is required. And I've seen some really cool resources before from the Skin Cancer Foundation and other sources where it shows you based off the UV index what you should be wearing. Leah, I don't know if you've seen those too, but it's like, it starts with like, you know, sunscreen, a hat, and then works all the way up to like, get inside now, don't be outside. So Leah, what are your thoughts on the UV index? Is it something that you have done a lot of research into, or something that you kind of just know to always look for since you were diagnosed with melanoma?
Honestly, before melanoma, I didn't really pay attention to the UV index. I mean, I remember when I was, in my early 20s and younger, just having the news on or having the weather report on, you'd hear those words like, oh, the UV index is at a,
Right.
sky high rating today or something like that, or watch the UV or whatever. But again, like, pre-melanoma, that just wasn't on my agenda to really focus on that. On my agenda was making sure I had time to lay out and get tan and all that good stuff. So I actually probably was a fan of the
Right. When it
high
was higher. Yeah.
UV index because of
Right.
that. But obviously now at where I am in my life post melanoma, it's something I also, Erica, look at every day. I actually just use my Apple Watch or my iPhone where they do a really good job breaking it down. I would love, I don't know if this is a thing yet, to your point, Erica, if we could go a step further and say what the UV index level is, what that really means, and how you could protect yourself. That would be cool to see on the weather app or on phones or
Right.
smartwatches. I would love to see that. But it's super important. It's something that, everybody should really know about, whether you have experienced skin cancer, melanoma or not. It really will set you up for success on how to protect your largest organ, knowing the
Yeah.
UV index. And like you, Erica, even when we are at that level 1 and 2, the low stages of the UV index, I'm still protecting myself because I'm not going to risk getting melanoma again, and
Right.
obviously, I can do everything to protect my skin, and it could still come back because that's just
Right.
my life. I will always have a risk of it returning. But again, if I know that I'm doing what I need to be doing, that makes me feel good, and that gives me that sense of security and reassurance. But yeah, I think a lot of people, especially in, the areas of the globe that are closer to the equator and those hotter countries like Kenya and Ethiopia, they definitely need to be aware of this. And, I'm just wondering, what is their sun protection plan,
Right.
as far as sunscreen, protective clothing, seeking shade. It's unfortunately, it's not always something that we can avoid and we can escape. People have jobs that are outside all day.
Right.
I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, Erica, construction workers.
Hmm.
I've seen so much construction this whole summer, and they are out day in, day out, people working on homes, people working on yards, landscapers. And I'm just hoping and praying that they're wearing sunscreen or they're taking shade
Right.
breaks or wearing protective clothing. But I think in reality, I don't think a lot of them are, because again, it goes back to the lack of education and awareness around the gravity and severity of skin cancer and melanoma. And so I think us talking about it on this podcast, us sharing about it on social media, all of the Melanoma and Skin Cancer Foundation organizations on social media talk about this frequently all
Yeah.
year round. The UV
Right.
index should be something that you pay attention to all year round in every season, because as long as that sun's going up, there's a risk of UV
Right.
exposure.
Right. I think to add to what you're saying, Leah, it also comes down to resources as well. Like, do people have access to these tools? I know when I was starting my sun safety journey, I didn't even know what sun protective clothing was. I knew sunscreen, and at that time, it was sticky, gross zinc oxide sunscreen that didn't rub in and left a white cast, and it wasn't cute, and no one wanted to wear it. But it comes down to resources and education. Like, they really do go hand in hand, that someone can know their risks, but what if they can't afford the solution to, keep themselves unsafe? And as you were talking, I was also thinking about, I don't know if anyone else had like the UV stickers when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was like ahead of the curve when it came to sun safety. And we used to have like little stickers that we would put on our bathing suit when we went outside that would tell you when it was time to reapply. And I remember being a kid, and she was trying to teach us to be responsible for it. But as a kid, you really don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
like, what's the risk? Like, why should I care? I want to play with my friends. I want to get in the water. But I remember putting that sticker on, and like 30 minutes later or 20 minutes later, in the peak of the summer, it was already red, which means it was time to reapply. And I'm like, these are broken. This can't possibly work. And that was just my brain as a kid. And thinking back on it, I'm like, holy smokes. And I probably stayed out for another 2 hours
Yeah.
before I reapplied. But just things like that are now more readily available, and parents are educating themselves so that they can be the best advocates for their kids is really exciting. But I think it all comes down to education and learning about the UV index. And it sounds super, I mean, when you actually physically look at how they measure the UV index, it is so complicated that people can't understand it. Like, it is that complicated, everything that goes into it. So I think it is important that, let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Let's not make it a complicated thing. Let's make it like an easy scale system that we can talk about with kids and help them understand. But the article concludes with asking, can you ever tan safely? And Leah, if an article ever talks about this, I'm going to pull it out, because there is no safe or healthy way to get a tan unless it is coming out of a bottle. And one of the dermatologists that they talked to in this article said that the safest way to tan is out of a bottle using self tanner. It is never going to be safe or healthy to tan outside or inside in a tanning bed.
Yeah, that sure is true. And I wish I knew about that how many years ago now, but at least 5 or 6 years ago, before I had melanoma. And the last article, which is a great segue into what you just talked about, Erica, our final article is titled, I Felt Better with a Tan. It says, Woman 58 Addicted to Using Sunbeds. And this source was from SurvivorNet. And I really resonated with this article on a variety of levels, because I was also addicted to tanning. And I know a lot of our listeners can relate to that. And, people beyond our listeners that unfortunately now have dealt with the consequences of tanning, whether that was in tanning beds or, just tanning out in the sun. So, the article talks about how some people go to great lengths to achieve that golden bronze tan. And Caroline Madden, 58, has regularly used tanning beds, also called sunbeds. I think this is a European or Australian article, since she was a teenager. And however, decades later, she learned unsafe tanning came with a cost, as I just mentioned, which unfortunately involved two cancer diagnoses and the loss of part of her foot,
Oh man.
which is obviously devastating.
Hmm.
So in the article, Caroline Madden explained that when she was younger, makeup, moisturizers, and spray tans were not as effective as they are today because she's 58. So, this is taking us back a couple decades, leaving her with few options beyond tanning to achieve the desired complexion. So to your point, Erica, she wasn't getting what she wanted or needed out of that bottle, so she resorted to tanning beds. So she said, I used the tanning bed because it felt better, or I felt better with a tan, which again, totally relate to that. And she never got a warning, and she used them for about 10 years.
Wow.
Again, very similar to this woman, in regards to my own journey. And Madden's trouble began when a chiropodist, foot doctor, discovered a spot on her ankle, and she was urged to have it examined more closely. Tests revealed the suspicious spot was melanoma, which is the deadliest and fastest spreading type of skin cancer. She also went on in the article talking about how she needed a wider excision to see what stage it was. So she went back in, had a massive hole cut out of her foot, which was the size of a tennis ball, and had a skin graft from her groin and had lymph nodes removed from her groin because it traveled up, meaning the skin cancer. So she was diagnosed stage 3 melanoma immediately once she heard that. And she underwent treatment and spent several weeks in the hospital for surgery. She received chemotherapy every 3 weeks for a year. And, this article, even though it was very alarming and very tragic, having a part of her foot taken out of her because of using tanning beds,
Yeah.
Madden is sharing her skin cancer journey because when she was younger, regulations and added focus on the dangers of using sunbeds, tanning beds, were not as robust as they are today. So she hopes that other people desiring a tan will do so in safer ways. So what are your thoughts on this, Erica? Can you relate to this kind of addiction to a tan? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's something that so many young people feel pressure to be tan. And we've talked about this before, coming back from summer vacation and everyone had a gorgeous tan and it was kind of a rite of passage to come back tan. And, if you didn't go to the beach, like let's say you spent the summer, working in a corporate office or, inside in summer is coming to an end and you don't have resources like self tanner, some people did turn to tanning beds. I know so many people went to tanning beds before prom, before homecoming. That was just a thing. And there was really never any information about it. And I'm quite a bit younger than this woman is in the story. And it was, you signed papers before you went in, but no one actually read them.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't read them until you go back later in life and you realize that it's like, yeah, if you get skin cancer, you can't sue us. If you die, sorry, it's not on us. And that is terrifying. So I agree with Madden that it comes back to banning the tan and banning resources that people can use for indoor tanning if they don't know the risk, because no one uses a tanning bed or goes outside and tan thinking that they're going to develop melanoma. Like no one thinks that they're going to go through the treatment and everything this woman went through with her stage 3 diagnosis. No one thinks it's going to happen to them because, well, one, it's not readily talked about, and two, we all have an impression that, oh, well, it's not going to happen to us, right? It's not going to happen to us. It happens to older people. I mean, we've heard all of these misconceptions over and over again, Leah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I was that individual, living in kind of my own world, this invincibility mindset. I will never get skin cancer. I'll never get melanoma. I mean, I now am very open about my journey, even after my dad's first bout with melanoma, because he was diagnosed stage 0 on his back a month before my stage 1 melanoma. I was still using tanning beds after knowing about my own father that had melanoma, because I will say it was an addiction. I had a
Right.
routine: get up in the morning, have breakfast, go on a run, go to the tanning bed. I did that almost daily for months.
Yeah.
And just, there's statistics around being in a tanning bed for like less than a minute, the amount of damage that is done. I would
Yeah.
per session be in there for like max 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's just, you don't think about this stuff when it's happening, because you're only thinking about the result you're getting. You're thinking, wow, I feel good. Wow, I look good.
Hmm.
And
Right.
again, that's kind of with anything that you can get addicted to, but the tan thing just seems to, again, it goes back to society. Usually, when you look at models in, fashion magazines or brands or anything like that, we're doing a lot better than we used to. But, looking,
Yeah.
over the last couple of decades, most supermodels were tan, whether you're
Right.
male or female. And, we're still seeing that nowadays in a lot of brands. Yes, we're getting, like I said, better, but when you kind of get involved and play into this, what society sees as beautiful, and, what is the, achievable like goal here, it usually is something around having darker skin and having that glow and being tan. And, people don't think about how, oh my gosh, if I use a tanning bed, I could get a chunk of my foot taken out. Caroline Madden
Right.
didn't think that, but unfortunately it happened
Right.
to her. So I think in short, because I could talk about this for literally hours, I would say that Caroline Madden sharing her story was very brave. It was very courageous
Yeah.
of her. It's unfortunate she had to go through what she has went through. However, sharing her story is powerful, and I'm hoping that people read this story that, may be currently using tanning beds or currently laying out in the sun, will think twice before they do that again, and know that anybody is susceptible to getting skin cancer, no matter what your
Right.
age is, your gender, your race, what have you.
Right.
Anybody is able to get skin cancer or melanoma.
Yeah, agreed. I also think there is such a fascinating conversation that maybe for another episode surrounding tanning and mental health. We've touched on it a lot, but it kind of warrants its own episode in a way, because there is a mental health component to it, that when you're out tanning, when you're getting vitamin D exposure, you do have hormones that release that make you feel happy. And I don't want to dive too deep into it because I know we are already getting toward the end of this episode, but I just think it's such a fascinating conversation that, like, if you do use tanning beds and you're like, why do I feel so good? I don't want to give up on that. You're not alone. There's a hormonal equation that's basically happening that makes you feel that way. And there are other ways to get, that feeling, whether it be, from a runner's high, or spending time with your loved ones, or if you do have a vitamin D deficiency, working with your doctor to get vitamin D tablets, and, eating healthy. Like, there's so many ways to get that same feeling, but I totally relate to the first day of spring when the sun is out and after it has been a long winter. I used to just sit out all day because I was just so starved for that sun. And I hate the winter time. I like the warmth and the sunshine and all of that. So I totally get it, but there are healthier ways that we can, improve our mental health and feel the best. So maybe we dive into that in another episode, because I don't want to rant too long and take away from our community win segment. So that was our last story for September, but we have community wins for you guys. And I'm so excited to share these, because our first one is from Leah from Make Dorm Sure. And I'm excited to share this because Leah is actually coming on the podcast in a few weeks to share her story. So I think this is such a great introduction into her and the work that she's been doing post her diagnosis. So Make Derm Shore said that she'll be working with her son's elementary school, hopefully, and the principal to add sunscreen to the school supply list and adding sun safety to the school's safety messages that happen twice a year, which is so
Yay.
exciting. That is amazing. We've had so many incredible parents in this community who have had a diagnosis and then they go to their children's school and they're like, hold on, wait, we have to stop this at the source. So, congratulations, Leah. That's awesome. And we cannot wait to have you on the podcast in a few weeks to share more about your story. All right, the next community win is from our very own Jen Schultz. So at Jen_Patrice is launching her book called Bravely Becoming, which is going to tell Jen's story of life after cancer, living with melanoma, chronic illness, mental health, emotional eating, anxiety, healing, really all of the things that people go through post melanoma diagnosis. And Jen is an amazing member of the Ultraviolet Tide and the Ultraviolet community. She is the host of the Skin Check with Jen. So we're excited to cheer her on through her book launch. And Leah and I are supporting her in some really fun ways, which I'm so excited for. So congratulations, Jen. And we're so excited for your book launch. And then our last community win is also from a member of our community that you guys know very well, our very own Leah Adams. And I'm sure you guys have seen on social media that she is raising over $2,000 for the Skin Cancer Foundation in honor of her 5 years cancer-free this October while running a marathon. No big deal, Leah. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so I have been pretty preoccupied with running and fundraising over the summer. I decided that, this year being my 5-year cancer-free of melanoma, that I wanted to do something special and give back to a good cause. And this is not my first time raising money while running a marathon for an organization, but the Skin Cancer Foundation is one that I haven't yet raised money for. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to do so. The Skin Cancer Foundation, for those listening, is one of the largest skin cancer organizations in the country. They do incredible work for people that have been impacted by skin cancer or melanoma, but also do a lot of prevention work and are out in the community giving free skin checks and raising awareness about, the importance of skin cancer. And they are really in need right now of a lot of funds and support. One of them being they need a new RV to actually give free skin checks across the country. This RV has been around a long time, and let's just say it's kind of past its wear and tear stage. And if they don't get enough support, to get a new RV, they will not be doing a 2025 tour to do this. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to raise money for this cause, and I talk about it on my fundraising page. And my original goal was actually to raise $1,825, which is 1,825 days I've been cancer-free. So I wanted to have a meaningful amount. And as of this weekend, I exceeded that goal and crossed over 2,000, which is incredible.
Awesome.
And this makes marathon training a lot easier. I know that sounds kind of wild if you're not a runner and if you don't like to run, but this is my 4th full marathon, and it just makes it even more special that I'm doing this for a good cause, and I'm doing this as a celebration, for me to make it 5 years. And not everybody is able to say that, especially in the melanoma community. So I do say that with a lot of gratitude and appreciation. So that's what I've been up to. And I thought that, that's been a win for me. So I thought I'd share it on the pod.
That's a huge win. And I know this community has been cheering you on. Us who are not runners are amazed by you. I know I told you, oh my gosh, this had to have been years ago when you started doing your running series where you were recording. I would always message you and be like, I can't walk and talk at the same time. How are you running and recording and talking? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's taken me a long time. I've been running for over 11 years now. So my friends think I'm insane, but I guess like anything in life, you practice enough, you learn how to do it somehow. But yeah, I'm super excited. And the marathon is on September 8th. So I think this podcast will come out after that already. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, September 8th. All right, I'm writing it down. so that we can make sure to cheer you on social media. I mean, we partnered with you during your
Mm-hmm.
training to do an outfit and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
just, I love how you've used a marathon as an opportunity to, okay, well, we're going to make it sun safe. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to make it benefit an organization and a foundation. So we're just so excited to cheer you on. And, after this comes out, I guess we can say congratulations, because by the time you guys are listening to this, Leah's going to have crushed this marathon. So congratulations.
Thank you. I may be really sore while listening to this podcast when it comes out, but I'll get through it. No, it's been great. And it's interesting you say that, Erica, because I feel like running a marathon and living life after melanoma is also kind of like a marathon, like in a
Yeah.
weird analogy type of way. It's something that you kind of work on, you work through. What does your life look like, after dealing with cancer? And so it's definitely not a sprint to figure that out. It's definitely a marathon. It takes time and it takes dedication, to implementing a sun safety routine and all that good stuff. So I don't know. I just thought of that it is kind of ironic that it's similar in thinking of that.
Oh, for sure. No, I think that is a great analogy. And well, I think that wraps us up for September, which is crazy, but you're going to be back in October and we're going to continue the conversation. So, if you guys listen to this episode and you have stories that you want us to cover, or you have community wins that you want to share, reach out to me, reach out to Leah, and we are so excited to continue the conversations that come from this podcast, particularly these episodes. It's fun for us because you guys are involved in the process, that you listen and you communicate with us and you share. That's really the fun part. So thank you guys so much for listening. And Leah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Erica, and thanks for everybody listening.